safety of the president traveling in that motorcade.
That's correct. And any interstate highway has multiple ways to access that highway, so those all have to be blocked as well. It's very resource intensive, manpower intensive, but you have to remember is that you really can't really be cheap on that type of protection when it comes to the president.
Right.
Okay.
We believe this is Air Force One.
Yes, we're being told.
About to land and taxi onto the air base in just a few minutes. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, what an incredible sight.
It does take your breath away.
It sure
I mean, no
does.
matter what your political affiliations may be, that is Air Force One, and it is the most famous symbol of the presidency of the United States right there.
I think you're correct. No matter your political leaning, it's just such a great day to see this happening right here at home.
Yeah.
And the reason it's happening too, that's what really makes it great.
You see the American flag in the back there.
Right, and that's not the 747. I believe that's the smaller jet.
That's correct. Iris, can you hear us? Iris is standing by at Hancock.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you, Ryan and Christy.
Set the scene for us.
As you see, it just landed.
Iris, are there a lot of people around you? Describe what's going on around you at the moment where you're standing.
I'm sitting where all the media are right now, and we've been here for a few hours now. As we had to leave for them to do the security check, and when we came back, the motorcade and all the military and law enforcement vehicles were ready and waiting, so they've been preparing for him. I did see Senator Gillibrand as well, so she's here to greet him. And there's a group of people also waiting. So it's a lot of anticipation and a lot of planning, as former Major Coots said, to prepare for this visit. And Andrew talked about just how exciting it is, and he got to see the chip that Micron is going to make. And as I was telling you before, this is kind of a homecoming of sorts, you can say, for President Biden. It's his first time coming as president, but he's no stranger to this area. As I had mentioned before, he graduated from Syracuse University College of Law. His first wife was from Skaneateles, and her family's still here. Just the most recent presidential visit was President Obama into Onondaga County in 2013. Here he came to Nottingham High School in Syracuse, but we're waiting for the president to make his way down. I'll step out of the shot again. A number of security people are waiting for the plane to come, and so we're just waiting for our first sight of President Biden here. I'll send it back to you guys.
It usually takes a few minutes for the plane to taxi into place. Sure. We know Congressman John Katko is on the plane. Right. Also, I would think members of the media, the White House press corps probably on the plane, as well as some of his top staff members as well.
Because he would have to still have a security detail with him on board the plane, but also his national security team would have to be with him too.
Frank, how many agencies are involved? Do they try to keep it to one or two agencies so there's continuity, or is there several agencies that are working in this detail?
So there's certainly several agencies that anybody can think of. Syracuse Police Department, Onondaga County Sheriff's Office, the State Police. Remember, Onondaga Community College has its own police department, so they are certainly involved. And any other type of jurisdiction they may drive through, not knowing exactly what the route is, probably those 4 or 5 departments, but there are some federal partners that they work with. The Secret Service is a huge consumer of intelligence, and they want to make sure they get as much as possible. All
right, and again, it just
back in view.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It gives you chills when you see it.
It sure does.
It's just amazing to see. There it is, Air Force One, and pretty soon it'll bring the stair when it stops. They'll bring the stairs up. You'll see the door open. You'll see the president quickly come down the stairs. Right?
Yeah. There's no delay with his descending the stairs. As I stated earlier, his safety really is at its probably most weak point when he's exposed like that. So they want him down the stairs and they want him into the motorcade.
Right, and this is the smaller jet. I've seen the 747. That thing is huge.
It's massive.
So this is a smaller plane.
That's correct.
So if you're just joining us, President Biden touching down in Syracuse probably about 2 minutes ago. Now he is taxiing. From here, he'll head to OCC, and he will then be joined by several of the dignitaries here, local, federal, and he will obviously give remarks today to tout the CHIPS bill, to tout this huge investment here in central New York, up to $100 billion by Micron.
And once Air Force One stops and the president leaves the plane, that plane doesn't move, does it?
That plane does not move because it's ready to go in the event that they have to take some type of emergency measures. They have to evacuate him in a very short amount of time. So the only time it's going to move is when it's ready to taxi to depart. But there's a huge security detail just around it that so it can remain static and not interfere with the rest of the operation at the Syracuse airport.
We'll probably have some folks just joining us and didn't hear your first answer when you talked about, you know, the safety of the president, when also the public's right to know about what's being closed down. These closures that are going to be happening around the route, these are probably really quick spot closures, right?
I wouldn't call them quick because right now they are closed. Okay. And again, assuming that he's going to be on 81 in some part, whether he heads north onto 41 or south through the city, those closures have taken effect and they're in place. So first of all, they can ensure that there's no extraneous traffic still on the highway, that if there's any vehicles that may have broken down, they can mediate that to ensure that it's not a safety issue, and then ultimately they want to get him to his final destination.
Yeah, I think the state police were saying that between 2 and 5 expect delays on 81 and 41. That was the only detail they were giving. Right. They said 81, 41, between 2 and 5. So if you're watching this and you know somebody might be driving that route, you might want to give them a call and say,
or they may be a little late for dinner tonight.
That's right.
So let's watch Air Force One taxi into place. It always takes a few minutes for this to happen, and then you're going to see, I would think, the stairs moved right up to the front door, that door open up, and we will see the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, back in Syracuse for the first time as president. He has many connections to Central New York. As you know, he's a graduate of Syracuse University Law School, graduated in 1968, used to live on Stannard Avenue when he was a law student. So a lot of people remember him as their neighbor, as their friend. His wife, his first late wife, was from Auburn, New York. So Joe Biden has many connections to our area. But again, exciting because we have never seen him as president here in Central New York. He's been back for fundraisers. Correct. You know, we've seen him make trips up to Syracuse University, but never before as the president. And there is the moment we've been waiting for. Let's see what happens now.
And as you heard Iris mention a little bit earlier, that we had Barack Obama here as president. You had Donald Trump came to Utica and Fort Drum in 2018. And then President Clinton made many stops here in central New York. And you were part of those details, right?
That is correct, yes, for President Clinton and a little bit of President Obama before my retirement. Yeah.
So give us a feel for security right now as the doors are about to open with that plane.
So the Secret Service is engaged with strict security measures, protective measures now as Air Force One is sitting on the taxiway. There's very little extraneous movement going on because they don't want any type of distractions. They want to ensure that the protectee is getting from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs and into the motorcade. I think you'll be seeing the motorcade pulling up here shortly if it's not already in place. Because they don't want, this is probably his support team that's getting off the rear of the plane that tends to be national security people, press. It looks like there's some personnel from the Air Force, as you can see, but definitely not the protectee himself.
And John Katko, as we've been told, he's riding that plane today.
That's correct.
Yeah, he'll also be in that group getting off the plane here and making his way to
That's quite an entourage. I guess I'm kind of surprised that so many people were traveling with him.
You know, it's probably one of the more efficient ways to ensure that the continuity of his administration continues. Now.
Looks like we're getting ready for the moment we've been waiting for.
Here we go.
You can always tell by the red stairs.
The red stairs, of course. Telltale sign.
Yes.
We were looking at the wrong staircase.
That's okay.
This is the one we need to focus on right here. Iris St. Moran standing by, giving us a look and a feel for what it's like to be right there on the runway, Iris.
It's amazing, Ryan and Christy. As you said, the red stairs, I was paying attention to the wrong ones as well. But a number of people are there to greet him at the bottom of the stairs. Governor Kathy Hochul, Senator Chuck Schumer. Right next to Senator Chuck Schumer is Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Next to her is Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh and his wife, ready to greet him at the bottom of the stairs. And I talked about this motorcade that we saw waiting for him. They just pulled up to the red stairs. You see a number of people from the White House press corps. It's just amazing to be here in person and see it. Sometimes you see this on TV, but to be here, it's loud when the plane finally stopped right in front. But just an amazing moment. And at any moment, he's going to come to those stairs.
A sight to behold right there. Iris, thank you. Keep us informed. But as soon as you see him, let us know.
Is there a comment?
There he is.
There's the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, heading down the stairs. And this is going to be fairly quick as he gets, is that called a Cadillac One? Is that what they call it?
They call it the Beast.
They call it the Beast.
He's ready to greet a few of the members of the military there. Probably some other dignitaries also, that's typical.
Yeah. You see Mayor Walsh there on the right side.
He's getting a little sunshine. That's nice.
Especially in Syracuse.
Yeah. The weather, no problem
There's Mayor
for the
Walsh
president.
there.
Here's Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh, all smiles there.
And as you mentioned, Christy, a homecoming of sorts for President Biden.
For the president, yeah.
And I'm sure he's able to look out the windows and be very familiar with where he is when he's landing.
Senator Gillibrand.
Chuck Schumer is there, Senator Schumer. Also played a major role in securing Micron for the town of Clay, which is what this day is all about. We'll be seeing the president travel to OCC. He'll be delivering remarks at the SRC Arena. We have a team of reporters there, too, to bring you all the coverage. He's taking his time, greeting people who have been eagerly awaiting his arrival.
I believe that's Governor Hochul. Hard to see from this angle.
I would say that is Governor Kathy Hochul.
One thing.
No coincidence, I think, that his visit comes 2 days before early voting.
That is correct.
November 8th is right around the corner.
You have Senator Schumer and Kathy Hochul both on the ballot.
Yes.
So, yeah, for sure, that's, politics always involved. And this actually comes at a time where, Americans are saying the most important factor when it comes to voting is going to be the economy. Mm-hmm. And so, and the approval rating has been quite low for President Biden lately. I believe the latest ABC Washington Post poll had it below 40%. So he is definitely here to tout that CHIPS bill and try to get momentum for the Democratic Party as we head into the midterms.
All right, let's go to News Channel 9's Iris St. Moran. She's right there witnessing this for us. Iris, share some of your observations.
Christy and Ryan, I wasn't sure how long we would see the president once he got off of Air Force One. I wasn't sure if it was going to be, a quick hello and he would leave. But as you can see, he's taking his time. He's talking. There are a number of dignitaries. If you can make it out, I think you guys were talking about who was there, and I mentioned earlier. He's currently talking to Governor Kathy Hochul, Senator Chuck Schumer, as well as Senator Gillibrand. He did spend some time talking with Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh and his wife. And as we had talked about before, on Air Force One with him was Congressman John Katko. And we can see the press corps that travels with him. on a regular basis. So I guess we'll see how long the president is going to be talking to them. But it's nice to be here and kind of take in this moment. I'm glad it wasn't a quick thing where he got off the plane and left, but there are so many vehicles ready for the escort. We had talked about a number of roads being closed to assist with his smooth travel to Onondaga Community College. But it's it's a great day to witness a moment in history, and yeah.
Frank, are you surprised that it is this long, that he's taking this long outside the plane?
Yeah, this is a big deal. The Secret Service agent standing behind the president, this is where he starts getting gray hair, because he wants his protectee in a place where he can be protected. And again, that's an envelope around the Syracuse airport right now, and they are protected. But again, anytime he's out in the air, that's his most vulnerable spot, and they know that. But he's the President of the United States, and he does what he wants to do.
So he probably said to them, no, I'm going to spend some time with Governor Hochul, with Chuck Schumer, with Gillibrand.
So it's kind of an unwritten communication they have with their protective detail, is that they know that they're there to serve and protect the president, and whatever he decides to do, that's what they have to work with. He also understands the responsibility the Secret Service has to keep him safe. So he tries to balance that at these points, and he understands that this is a very safe spot as well. However, there's, you can see there's 2, 3 right there next to him, Secret Service agents.
Getting gray hairs by the minute.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And it's important to point out, this is at Hancock Field, which is a very secure spot in general. It's not a public spot, so this is probably another reason where there's, they're feeling a little more secure than maybe in some other spots.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah, the president is fully aware of that.
Yeah.
Right. And Governor Kathy Hochul, of course, wants to spend time with the president. Recent polls have shown that the gap is not as wide as it once was, and this is a way, I would think, that Democrats can energize the party as well. A presidential visit can do that, and help bolster the candidacies and get your voters energized to get out and vote. And in 2 days is early voting. So.
And you mentioned, the gap closing between Governor Hochul and then Lee Zeldin, and Zeldin's actually in town today. He's talking about crime today. He's in Syracuse. But one thing of note, and something that actually President Biden has been pushing back against, is that the idea that some of those running for office in the Democratic Party have tried to distance themselves from the president because of his approval ratings as of late. He said that's not true, that he's been out on the campaign trail, but that has been one of the criticisms, and obviously...
No distancing at this moment.
Exactly.
They want to be as close to the president as possible.
When it comes to a $100 billion investment, they're like, come on in, absolutely.
So any moment we're going to see the president get into the beast and travel to Onondaga Community College. We're not quite sure what route he will be taking. We're assuming some of the highways, because we've been told by state police to expect some delays and some road closures along I-81 and 481. Again, we're not sure of the route. I think News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan is eager to jump in and share some observations with us. He loves politics, so let's bring Andrew in.
He's at
Andrew,
OCC.
Can you hear us? He's at OCC.
Well, Christy, I'm watching along with you, and yes, I am a student and political geek. So I love to see the President of the United States, no matter who it is, in the same county in which I reside. It's just incredible as you see the flags blowing and the familiar wind of a runway at an airport as the President boards his very, very fancy limousine. One thing that I was noticing, you saw that lineup of elected leaders, of politicians, the governor, the senators, the congressman, the mayor, but also Lindsay Walsh, the mayor's wife. She did not sign up for this to be the wife of an elected leader. Maybe she did. Maybe she saw something in Ben Walsh Young in terms of his aspirations. But for her to be in that lineup to meet the President of the United States, just on a human level, that's what's striking to me about that moment. To see someone who's not elected but just kind of is along for the ride with her husband's political career, to then get a moment with the President of the United States. That was one thing that struck me. Also, the political stories here, the fact that Congressman John Katko, Republican, has not been shy to criticize the Democratic Party and specifically the President, Joe Biden, yet he has crossed party lines for both the infrastructure bill last year, the CHIPS bill this year, and some of that clearly resulted in his invitation to board Air Force One and be there with the President of the United States. That is not an invitation that happens on accident. That's not a hitchhike, so to speak. It's not like John Katko needed a ride here, but someone decided that John Katko deserved to ride with the President of the United States. Remember, John Katko not running for re-election, a pretty tight race to replace him. He's leaving on his own terms. So to see him there with knowing that he and Biden don't get along on everything, but knowing they came together along with the senators and some other House members to make this CHIPS bill happen and bring these jobs to Central New York, it's just extraordinary. It's amazing to watch as we see those cars now, that long line of a motorcade head toward Onondaga Community College, where I'm speaking to you from. Just an amazing sight to see Air Force One sitting at the Hancock Airport.